Welcome, guys, to the Bochum Regionals 2023, baby. You guys can't see, but this room is so full and packed full of trainers ready to get their tournament itch scratched. We have a crazy weekend of Pokemon lined up for you with 3 events, Bochum, Knoxville, and then one in Japan as well. Honestly, I'm very excited. Fresh off the back of OCIC as well, we want to really see how the format develops and everyone's itching, ready to get their CP and potentially money prizes as well. But now we're going to try and find Benjamin Rabioti as he's going to give us more info about the event.
We have over 800 masters here in Bochum this weekend, all battling out for 3 different prize spots. We've got CP on offer for the World Championship invites in their own roads to Yokohama. We have travel stipend awards ready for the next internationals. And most importantly, regional prize support where cash prizes and booster boxes can be won. We'll be streaming all weekend here at Bochum, so please stay tuned. And with that, back to the casters ready for round 1.
Hi. I don't think it was.
Oh.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you very much, guys, for bringing it back over to us. We're excited to be bringing you all the action from Regionals Bochum. I'm Alex Dow. I'm very delighted to be here alongside Amy. So thank you very much. How are you feeling?
Really excited for today. It looks like there's going to be some fantastic matchups. I really can't wait to see the action go down.
Yeah, we've got, of course, as per usual, the 9 rounds of day 1 Swiss to go and walk you guys through until we get our day 2 competitors for tomorrow as well. But it will be action-packed. We are coming off the back of OCIC as well. So we've got fantastic players having traveled all over the world and have made the journey to Germany as well. So lots to look forward to, a lot of players to look forward to. So, yeah, we've got players such as, we've got Pedro, who, of course, was part of the top 8 in OCIC, alongside Owen Kammerman and Raz Wolp. So, three European players in OCIC top 8 there for us, which is a fantastic result, of course, and then alongside all the other EU players. And it's really exciting to see them also come back here again.
It's so exciting just to see all of the players getting ready. The hall is packed. We have so many competitors today, over 700 masters ready to battle once again after such a short span of time, really. There are a lot of events going on right now, and more than anything, we're hoping they're not too sleepy after OCIC to bring it once again and show us that fire.
Yeah, no, it is a momentous journey for a lot of players. But, we're back into our regional tournaments and regional structure now. So much to look out for. Of course, this whole event and whole sort of meta right now is all very well matured. We're going to see a lot of the very same decks that we have seen for some time now and still will continue to see, but this is where we're going to start to see some more players find those extra little tweaks really to bring out the best.
So many interesting little changes, even with just the small mini set that we've had out recently, that has made a really massive difference to a lot of the fine-tuning elements of these decks.
Is there anything in particular that's really stood out for yourself, Amy? Maybe from OCIC or anything in more recent tournaments online as well? Because, of course, we have a fantastic online series that a lot of people are involved in to kind of keep people interested and playing at the same time, keeping everyone's skills at the highest levels. But anything interesting that you're looking out for this weekend?
I think we're really going to have to keep an eye on those Sky Seal Stones this weekend. It's going to be so interesting to see how many of those pay off. And I also think that the single prize Zamazenta is something to really be looking out for. I think it has gone long underestimated, and I think will be interesting to see it in some single prize decks this weekend too.
Yeah, definitely. Having spoken to players like Pedro, who did play it in OCIC as well, he just told me about all the value he got out of such an amazing card that he just saw kind of tweaked in and sort of teched into different sort of lists. So going straight into decks like that right now is amazing. So yeah, it's alongside that, I'm always been a fan of things like Mew as well. It's always had the targets on its back. It's had a card which has been released to keep it in check, but then it goes through so many different amazing cycles of that deck itself. So yeah, lots of different decks. We've already spoken about a little bit about Lost Box, but we're going to try and bring as much action to you as possible as well. Yeah, so we're just going to have a little look at the crowd here, just as we've seen. Amy did mention already, because there's so many players, everyone getting ready, sat down for their round 1, which is kind of just getting everyone in that sort of situation. You've been in this situation before, Amy, having played a number of tournaments, of course.
Many a times, many a times. It's so nerve-wracking sitting down for that first round. I'm always shaking. I still never get over just seeing the plethora of people ready to start this long, long day. The stress and the pressure of just so many people around you, knowing that you've got a really long journey ahead. You can't use too much of that mental willpower too early on. This really is a test of endurance for the players as much as a test of skill.
Yeah, as this game has completely grown over the years, now going all the way to those 9 rounds that you have to play. 9 rounds of potentially 50-minute games, potentially sometimes a bit more, depending on how the matches play out. We're hoping all the players are staying hydrated, already having had as much sleep as possible, and really come prepared for this tournament. A lot of people tend to, spend a lot of time getting themselves prepped, because there is a lot on the line, of course. It is a regionals tournament. There is, of course, prize money on the line. There's a lot of championship points. And, we've had that fantastic news that the limit has also been reduced to allow more players the opportunity to qualify for the World Championships in Japan as well. So it's an amazing, amazing opportunity here, alongside all the other tournaments coming up.
Absolutely. There'll be a lot of players here today whose chance to get into those World Championships will kilter on this weekend. Just a few points in it for a lot of players here today, really. So it's a really fantastic moment for them.
Yeah, exactly. And we've already seen a number of players, of course, have already qualified for the World Championships in Japan. So it's just looking for that opportunity to make this World Championships in Japan, the first one ever in Japan, one of the best ever. But yeah, as we here now, go to your screen as we're about to start and see your players set up for round 1. We are going to be bringing, of course, Pedro on the right-hand side, playing his tried and tested Lost Box, up against Nico Bowl, against that deck that I just mentioned as well, that Mew VMAX. So really interesting to see how this one plays out, of course, as we also now get to see the players having set up with their prizes out.
Absolutely, and we can already see a really interesting card in that Mew VMAX list. I was not expecting to see much of the leafy camo poncho this weekend, so already something really spicy to see on that screen.
Yeah, and both players there, we did see the fist bump. So we are bringing you your round 1 matchup now, and we do see Nico will be starting off, and has started, of course, with that important card, that Battle VIP Pass, being able to grab 2 basic Pokemon from the deck, giving him also an understanding of what's in his deck as well. Immediately goes down with the Mew V and the Genesect. Ideal start, what you need to get all those cards out. He is obviously eyeing up, seeing that confidence in Pedro's active right now. Trying to work out his game plan, because both players, as you've already mentioned, Amy, Nico's playing a very unique card with the Poncho, and Pedro's playing a few different cards himself that will also play a big part in this matchup that we've spoken a little bit about before actually the start of this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nico has a really unique position here with his deck list being a little different. I wonder if we're going to see any other interesting cards that Pedro might not be expecting. Unfortunately, one of those is sat in the prize cards, but depending on how early Nico manages to get that out, where he does have to take all of his prizes one by one with Pedro's single prize deck.
Yeah, and there's the biggest tell of the Mew VMAX list that we're going to be seeing from Nico already, with that Meloetta hitting the bench, which of course means he will be playing that Fusion Energy as well, and the list of Sparkle in his list. Obviously, we've seen a few different takes on Mew and Mew VMAX decks now as they've kind of rotated through a cycle, but it's always interesting to see it come back. And there's also interesting cards in that Fusion Energy Mew because of that path to the peak, also in the prizes as well. But that is Nico's turn. It does pass back over to Pedro now for his first turn of round 1.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he's gone and grabbed that Oranguru straight on the bench to give him a little bit more control over the game state. It's nice that he's gone for that nice and early, allowing him to swap the top card of his deck with one from his hand once per turn.
Yeah, it's always important to kind of get that card out because Pedro would have been playing against Mew many times before, thinking potentially there's that things like Marnie where he could potentially try and put the best card he needs to the top of his deck, preparing those sort of turns because a lot of Mews that we've seen in recent times have been quite disruptive. So with the Marnie being played, Pedro could put a card he needs to the top of his deck and just be prepared for that. However, we have seen from Nico's list itself, just to give you guys a bit of insight, we do have a bit of caster cam here. He does play Judges, which is another unique take to kind of disrupt the Lost Box engine. But yeah, we see Pedro here come out with his own Battle VIP pass as he does begin his own prize checking. Of course, we're again very fortunate to see all his prizes there as well.
Absolutely, and the comfies, getting those down nice and early is so important. Hopefully he's got momentum. 2 Battle VIP pass. Oh my goodness, that is fantastic. What a brilliant start. Obviously, Battle VIP pass can only be played on your first turn of the game. So beyond this point, they're pretty useless. We don't want to be seeing those later on in the game where they could clog Pedro's hand, especially since Nico does have disruption in their deck.
Yeah, definitely, and we're starting to see the full flow of all those confays now, that flower selecting ability, offering Pedro another opportunity to kind of remove those Battle VIP passes from his deck, should he see it from the top 2 cards when he does begin moving and maneuvering around, pivoting around those confays as he progresses his turn to be able to activate all those special cards in his deck, utilizing that Lost Zone engine. And we do see the first flower selecting of our regionals. Couple of interesting choices there. I don't think it's maybe too bad at the moment. But Pedro, of course, will make sure he assesses every option available to him. So there goes the first Lost Zone card. It looked quite blue, but I wasn't too sure.
I think it may have been a Cramorant. But again, it's one of those things where every single decision with those flower selecting can be game changing. It's so skillful and important to make sure that Pedro is keeping pace with the game and making sure that every single decision with every single different matchup is taken into consideration. He needs to make sure that every single card he's taking isn't going to falter in the late game. Yeah,
definitely. And we see a Chorus's experiment from Pedro now giving him more decisions to make. As far as a friend of mine, Pedro, I've always ever seen him on stream where he always looks a little bit stressed out choosing his options here. Does choose to Lost Zone the Snorlax, that thumping snore. Attacker, obviously very bulky, a big, strong attacker in these Lost Zone decks. But we can't see quite the other cards, unfortunately. But as soon as we'll try and get a bit of an idea, we'll give you that details as well. But now he's up to the 4 in his Lost Zone, so he can begin to attack with that Cramorant should he get the opportunity to do so. He's just eyeing up a number of options here. This is one of the few things I think we've noticed a lot with Lost Zone decks and Lost Box decks particularly. He's going into the conflict, so he must feel comfortable with another pivot or switch out as well. Has already used the Radiant Greninja ability to draw lots of cards into his hand. There goes a Mirage Gate into the Lost Zone. And, you know, Pedro's going to be thinking he's going to be doing some damage to this Mew and just trying to navigate what would happen next. He'll have to start thinking about his next turn and the turn after that, because Nico will be looking to evolve that Mew and start kind of dealing damage in his own way as well. And there's the water attachment to that Greninja, kind of offering that opportunity to use that wonderful attack that a Greninja has as well.
Absolutely, getting some damage in on a Mew deck is really crucial for Pedro, especially where his prize journey is going to be quite important. With Mew's fantastic ability to Psychic Leap itself back into the deck, any chip damage made, especially with a deck like Lost Box, where a lot of it can pivot on those Sableyes, it's important that Pedro makes sure he manages his resources in a way that he can end up getting some KOs. Genesect obviously not being able to take any sort of heal, so maybe that Greninja is eyeing up those Genesects for later.
Yeah, definitely. And I was just may need to double check as well. If we're thinking about the number of cards in Pedro's Lost Zone, he did comfy the first one. He did use Korra's Experiment to put it to 3, actually, and then one final comfy. So might be on 4, which is might be why he didn't pivot back into the Cramorant to attack. But of course, as Nico has now played the Alyssa Sparkle, after it being passed over, we see the 2 energies attached to the Mew VMAX in the active spot, and the Genesect on the bench as well. And Nico will continue now just kind of bursting through his deck with those Fusion Strike system abilities. Of course, he may or may not know whether Pedro plays something like the Drapion, but when you've already got 4 down at this point, you can continue just kind of getting all them all out and just getting as consistent as possible. He may be looking for those cards like the Judge to really disrupt Pedro's hand as soon as possible. But he does use the Fusion Strike system there on his bench. He does have access to 2 more. So it's just assessing his options there as he's drawn up to 5 cards.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the choice belt going down just to thin the hand.
Yep.
Not able to do any extra damage with that right now, where Pedro doesn't have any 2 prize Pokemon out on the field and no space for them, as is quite typical of these sorts of decks. Quite often we'll see the Mew taking a few prizes before Pedro clocks into gear and manages to catch up. And that's the beauty of primarily single prize decks. Even with a few multi-prize attackers, bring them out later and you can quite often jump and surprise your opponent with some fierce attacks.
Yeah, and there we go. I think Nico's just announced his attack after the 2nd Fusion Strike system, just using that Meloetta Melodious Echo attack to take out that active Comfey, taking the first prize of round 1, and now it's back over to Pedro's side, who immediately uses Greninja's ability to draw 2 cards there, discarding, I believe, that Water Energy. Just again, helping us viewers as well to keep an eye on the Water Energies, or the energies, sorry, in Pedro's discard pile. We get a nice look at Pedro's hand. All of those options available to him. Of course, does have that Korra's Experiment as well. Does use the Guru first.
Yeah, to keep control of their hand, and they know which card they're going to see, so they can immediately Lost Zone that useless Battle Pass that we didn't need. So absolutely fantastic play there. Such a beautiful combination used with that Oranguru. Really why it shines in decks like this, because again, it just gives you that control over your game state and allows you to know exactly what's going to be there for you to pop straight in the Lost Zone.
Yeah, 100%. We touched on it a little bit. You know, just being able to find utility ways to kind of remove less useful cards like that Battle VIP pass after the first turn is great. And there is a heavy Hisuian Heavy Ball from Pedro as well, identifying that there's actually no Pokemon in there. I believe it was 2 Psychic there. There you go, as we see. 2 Psychic, 1 Capture, 2 Escape Rep, and that Roxanne does play the Korra's Experiment, again giving himself many options into his hand. Already at quite a large size, if we already looked at it a moment ago as well. So again, he's just thinking about mapping out those turns that he's going to be having to play up against Mew, because of course he is already under pressure. Nico's taken that first prize, and Pedro will just have to start trying to navigate how he's going to map out his 6 prizes that are going to be coming. So as you can see, we've got an over the 7 into the Lost Zone, so that Mirage Gate is now active as well, despite already seeing 1 hit the Lost Zone. So lots of options here. So be interesting to see how Pedro will navigate the rest of this turn. Does have still a bench space, of course, hasn't utilized that yet. Thinking about Nico's side of the board, what Pedro's looking at, there is only the 1 new VMAX. Of course, does have that single prize attacker in Meloetta as well. But with already 2 Fusion Energies already committed, that Drapion, if he does suddenly get a Drapion, it's actually not a terrible option as well. But here we go with the Mirage Gate straight to the Greninja. Again, offering that double snipe damage, which is fantastic on a card that already does so much in so many different decks.
It's absolutely brilliant, and it's just not going to let up here at all. The 1 Mew in play is really interesting because Nico's hoping that Pedro doesn't have anything that can suddenly jump out at that Mew and take it down. But the beautiful thing about Fusion Strike Mew is that Nico will still have an attack option next turn. Unlike the ever so popular double turbo energy Mew, we don't have an issue if that Mew gets knocked out. He still has attacking options. And with the use of Melodious Echo, if that Mew survives, then it can use Genesect's attack instead without needing to pivot. So it's not too bad, and it's not a shabby position to be in at this
Oh,
point.
not at all. It's something that we've seen, as you've already mentioned, with the double turbo Mew, having to be forced to use the Mews back to back. But in this scenario here, we do see that wonderful card that you've also mentioned, though, that Zamazenta being teched in to a lot of lost spots lists now. And just here we go, just a little quick retreat, paid a retreat cost into that Greninja. And looks like he's going to be using Greninja to potentially snipe down that Meloetta there to remove that from the action for now. As Pedro still continues to map out his turns. That Zamazenta, of course, you've seen it a few times, Amy. That Metal Shield ability, allowing you, if this Pokemon has any energy attached, it takes 30 less damage. So it really becomes a super bulky Pokemon with, in effect, 160 HP.
And I love a good revenge-based attack. If you were knocked out on the previous turn, you're going to do a lot more damage. So Pedro's getting that set up ready, knowing that Nico's going to continue to take consistent knockouts. Pedro's done a really fantastic job of managing their resources this turn, making sure to use that ordinary rod, putting more energy back into the deck so they don't fail on those Mirage Gates, because this is really going to be an interesting display of how he manages his energy, because we can see both of their psychic energy in the prize cards, and Pedro's very aware of that from that Hisuian Heavy Ball. So they know that Sableye isn't an option here. Nico's none the wiser, so that's brilliant, but not particularly a Shining Star card against this matchup anyway, so he's probably not that concerned, but it does limit Mirage Gate, where you must select 2 different types of energy to attach to your Pokemon. Yeah,
and Pedro is playing, of course, with Lost Box. You're playing a number of flavors within your deck. But we do see the Moonlight Shuriken come down onto Nico's side of the board, taking out that Meloetta and putting 90 damage onto that Genesect, removing it down now to just 100 HP. Nico, of course, has come back to him now. Both players are even with the 5 prizes remaining on each side of the board. Nico immediately identifying he may need to keep using that Meloetta at some point in this game. As I might have mentioned a moment ago as well, Pedro does have access to a Drapion V, or Drapion V. So that Mew he didn't necessarily need to put damage onto that Mew. It can be taken out in a massive one-hit KO at some point. Nico looks like he's also attaching that DT to that Genesect, potentially giving himself a pivot option or another attacker via that energy. He also has it on it with that Fusion Strike energy as well. As he begins to use Fusion Strike system. Those wonderful markers allowing us to keep track of the game state as well. As you see, both players are using the tokens to keep going throughout the game so far.
They look absolutely fantastic. It's nice that we can see really clearly when an ability has been used, especially in a deck like Mew, where it is consistent with those abilities too. It's just awesome to see. That Genesect being damaged is really quite scary, but the prize trade in this matchup is quite interesting, and seeing the way Pedro's managing that is fascinating to see, because it is really unusual to see a deck doing little bits of damage, being able to manage an absolute gargantuan HP total like Mew has at 310.
Yeah, the VMAX Pokemon being really, really tanky and bulky for a lot of matchups. But in this scenario with Pedro's situation, he's having to kind of sprinkle damage here and there. Hasn't had the chance to use that Cramorant on this bench yet, which is something you typically would use turn 1 or sometimes turn 2 to start racking up that damage, applying pressure on your opponent. There was the tails on the Chromatic there from Nico's side of the board as well, thinning his hand, but unfortunately wasn't able to grab whatever card he would have liked. Goes for the second of the game. Here's another dice roll. It's another tails. Hasn't hit the 50-50 you'd want to expect in this game so far.
That's so disappointing, but it's not a bad thing in Mew. It's still narrowing that hand, so the Genesect put in more work. So it's not a bad thing in the end game. It's actually strangely not too bad to see. And look, they still had plenty of resources to burn, so they are just slamming through that deck, looking for exactly what they're going to need for the next turn.
Yeah, so they're just double checking the damage there, I believe, because there was double power tablets being played. Does choose to use a Melodious Echo again to attack, of course, allowing Mew to chain back-to-back attacks if required. I would have liked to have seen, maybe that's why he was trying to go for the Chromatic, maybe a way to disrupt Pedro's hand as well, because I reckon it's still looking fairly large, and typically of Lost Box decks, you are having many cards into your hands with so many different options. Of course, does still have access to 2 comp phase on his bench and board state as well, but you just want to be disrupting them as much as you can. And there's the Guru play, again, opening things up on Pedro's turn and straight into the flower selecting there. So knows what he was going to remove in a similar vein with that Battle VIP pass.
Yeah, that Lost Zone is healthy, so we definitely don't need any more comp phase for now. They are doing their job quite nicely, working in tandem with just the 2 of them. Certainly an easy discard at this stage in the game, where Pedro's deck's looking a little thin, so definitely got a lot of cards in hand. So much flexibility with that. It will be interesting to see what decisions he makes, because I'm sure that he's got the world in his hand to use.
I mean, it's one of those things, as you begin to sort of whittle down through your deck with these types of engines, you'll start to only really have useful cards remaining. So even if Pedro is disrupted at some stage, there'll be a point where Pedro will be thinking, well, it doesn't really matter too much, because every card should at this point be very useful. We do see the training court come down, a little marker there from Pedro to show that he has used it. Again, helping us and the viewers at home understand exactly what's going on in the board state. And there, just got the pivot option with the air balloon as well. And that Zamazenta looks like it's powered up, ready to retaliate. And there is the instant drop from the Drapion V as well.
And that huge hand has finally come in useful. Oh, yes, the beautiful timing of the Sky Seal Stone right there. This looks like it might be the turn that he goes for the big kill.
It is a the attack of Jugular, and will completely swing the matchup, and does point to it as well. Does activate that ability on that Sky Seal Stone, ready to use it up facing against his Mew VMAX. And Nico must not be feeling too great right now, knowing his massive attack is about to go down. And as you can see there, Pedro does have to deal 60 damage to one of his own Pokemon. Activates the Sky Seal Stone, indicates he will be taking 4 prizes. It's not something you typically see too often in any game of Pokemon, really.
No, that Drapion absolutely nailed it. The Mew did not like that sting at all, and we take a fantastically massive 4 prize cards. Like, that just swings the entire momentum of the game over in Pedro's favor, when it looked like Nico on prize cards was originally taking the lead. So it's going to be interesting to see if Nico can catch up from here, if he can turn this back into his favor.
Oh yeah, just double checking that that Mew did just hit the field. There was no Mew there initially, so obviously cannot immediately evolve back up into the Mew VMAX. So right now, the only other attacker going into this really is either using that Genesect with, I believe, that should be a Fusion Energy on it when he done it earlier. Does have that DTE on it, of course, as well. But it goes into just the kind of options here for Nico. And it's one of those few things that we need to just see how Nico's going to play this out now. Right now, you know, it's just under 30 minutes remaining of this round. Is in a sort of awkward situation where, you know, he's having to take, even if he took the knockout on this Drapion D, and then has to take 2 further single prize knockouts. And that's no easy feat when you're still being pressured from Pedro's side of the board. So it looks like it's just a pass, and Nico is just playing out this turn. And then Pedro's just pointing at, unfortunately, the same sort of thing, because it's already damaged, and Drapion V also does plenty of damage already. And that does seal our game 1 of round 1 of Bochum Regionals.
So much pressure, and the game went on for quite a while, so it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep pace now, if Nico can bring it back in game 2. Really fantastic show of just how much even a primarily single prize deck can manage against the gargantuan Mew VMAX.
Yeah, it was a massive swing by Pedro, and you know he'll be well versed in this matchup. You know he's taken a very similar deck, if not the same deck that he played at OCIC to great effect. Of course, finishing in top 8, where he has been a previous winner as well, I believe. But he's already made such a great start from this. Just eyeing up his turns, making sure he plays correctly, takes his time, makes those decisions as perfect as possible to put himself in a position to really just run through this tournament as well, if possible. So lots to kind of understand and really iron out within this matchup. As I mentioned, what Nico would love to do, I think, is actually begin to try and disrupt Pedro's side of the board. Where possible, of course, it's not always
no, as we saw in that game, he just was completely unable to make that disruptive move. We didn't see exactly Pedro's hand get disrupted almost at all, so it was just all in his hand and ready to wait and take that momentum of the game into consideration. Bide his time, because I think that's just the key, is making sure that you're calm and collected, not rushing, and it does pay off.
Yeah, I mean, with Lost Box decks, typically you don't often play 3 games. 50 minutes is on the sort of shorter side when you're playing a single prize deck, because having to take 6 KOs is sometimes quite difficult when you're facing up against Lost Box. But then also all those little micro decisions you're going to be making. We've spoken about it before in previous streams, and other people have alluded to the choices between Comfy's flower selecting to Chorus Experiment. Which one do you do first? But as you can saw from Pedro's side of the board, he was able to sort of maneuver that perfectly. He's been playing it a long time, so it's almost like muscle memory at this stage. Those perfect sort of Oranguru movements to the top of the deck, and just being able to remove less useful cards when he needs to. It's a real true sign of how a player can be so comfortable with his decisions and a deck as well. And it's something we often tell our friends to do as well, to play the similar decks that you'll make as minimal mistakes as possible. So here we're going to be going back into our round 1 as well. So this is game 2. Just a quick view of our prizes. It's a little bit on the sad side here for Nico because he does have double fusion energies prized. However, he will be going first, I believe, to start applying some pressure to Pedro's side of the board, because and he begins to set up, and we do see the DT immediately attached there onto Nico's side of the board. There's the quick ball as well. You can only assume he's going to be looking for those Genesects.
Absolutely, and hopefully maybe being able to draw into a Battle VIP pass to get that board nice and fruitful as he begins.
Yeah, we do see one of those prizes, but of course with these types of decks you will be playing the maximum 4 copies within the deck, just so that you can increase the odds of being able to draw into it or have them in your opening hand on your turn 1. But Nico will just be playing out the rest of his hand right now, just eyeing up a few different cards available to him. Does have his own stone attached to the Genesect, but unfortunately just has to pass, unable to use any of his abilities on this turn. So over to Pedro again. We get a lovely look at his hands. He does have the Comfy that I believe he just drew into. Does have a number of options there, and chooses to Chorus first.
Pedro does seem to have a really strong hand this turn. And it's a shame that Nico didn't manage to get quite the board they wanted. However, Mew can definitely pick up the pace. The fantastic thing about the deck is that it can just rocket out of nowhere.
Yeah, definitely. As you can see, Pedro already having to have multiple options available to him. Does eye up Lost Zoning that one of his 4 Mirage Gates, but still a few different choices there. He's just eyeing up again his plays. That Cramorant in his hand, going to his hand now from that Chorus Experiment. Maybe we'll get to see that attack, that spit innocently come to play on Pedro's first turn as well. Does immediately go with the Greninja ability there to draw the 2 cards as well, discarding that Capture Energy, which is an interesting play as well, because that's another way, of course, to try and get those Comfies out and begin pivoting around.
Yeah, he does seem to have a really strong hand for being able to already make a few pivots with that Comfy. And this will allow the Greninja to go again. So if another energy is in hand or acquired, we will be able to see. There we go, straight away. That concealed cards again. More more cards and flexibility with that comp phase. So hopefully just guaranteeing themselves more card draw is going to be beneficial.
Yeah, no, definitely. And now we're beginning to see even more cards with the flower selecting here as well. A little bit of an awkward decision to make here. Want to try and value that Drapion, but unfortunately has to give up that Chorus's experiment, I believe I saw, which is not ideal because often with Pedro's list and Lost Box list, you want to be kind of chaining those early where you can, sort of ramping up those Lost Zone cards. So you could begin utilizing those Mirage Gates, access to that Saberlife, for example, and just kind of really getting himself in the best position possible. Pedro here just eyeing up how else he could potentially, he did have a second capture energy in hand, so no wonder he concealed cards the first one. But again, just kind of giving himself a chance to get more cards down and just lots and lots of things ready to be able to try and take as many prizes as possible. This situation here, of course, with only 2 Fusion Strike Pokemon down, that Drapion V isn't able to really just come down and start swinging straight away in this current situation. But, you know, as you mentioned already, he can take his time. He can play out all of his turn to, we're going to say perfection, but to the best of his possible decision-making that he can do. And really then just start eyeing up those prizes a few turns later, because remember that massive swing we already saw can just happen again.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Nico's turn brings that back compared to the quite busy turn that Pedro's had. I think another really interesting point is that whenever that flower selecting happens, Nico gains a little bit of deck knowledge and a bit of hand knowledge. Pedro is showing more cards than the average deck would, and putting that Chorus experiment in the Lost Zone, well, the other card must have been quite good. So I feel like it's a nice little indicator of how things are going in Pedro's hand.
Yeah, definitely. And as we can see now, there was that escape rope into his Cramorant. Now able to use that Spit innocently to attack. You know, already 4 cards in the Lost Zone, which allows, with its ability, Lost Provisions, I believe it is called, allows it to attack with 0 energy cost. And there's the first damage placed down on this game 2. Onto that Genesect again, already just kind of threatening that that easy knockout, because there's no way really for Nico to remove that damage at all.
No, and we saw how impactful in the first game that damage on an unsuspecting Genesect made a huge difference in the end.
Yeah, and we just had a quick little nosy at Nico's hand there. It wasn't, unfortunately, in the best position. It was just a boss from hand, and it was another VMAX, and I believe a Chromatic, which means it's unplayable, and there's no way for Nico to be able to get out, but which means he has to use that stone to find any card of his choice. Does flip over his V-Star marker, which looks like a hotel key card. But here we go. So Nico able to now use that V-Star power to be able to pick any card of his choice. Chooses to go for the Quick Ball, maybe just to begin getting another Genesect down and allowing himself to continue drawing cards and giving himself an opportunity to get out of this position.
I think that was such a beautiful addition to the deck, being able to have an ability, a V-Star ability to be able to take any card in your deck. Just gets Mew out of those little situations where sometimes the hand is just too difficult to work with and you can't draw any cards. So the Quick Ball, I think, is quite a fantastic decision, really, because you're not only able to grab another Genesect, but also take another card away from that hand, which clearly had a blockage.
Yeah, and then also opens up that Fusion Strike system from the one already in the active spot as well. So he will hopefully have access to at least 2 Fusion Strike systems. Does draw into a few more cards, which he can begin to play down. Does get another Tails. That's 0 for free in this matchup so far. Does Fusion Strike system for a further 2 cards. Only needs to hit some sort of switching out or DTE to retreat into that Mew VMAX. And there's another Ultra Ball. So I believe he was discarding his own, I believe it was a Roxanne in his hand and one other card. Likely to be another Genesect to continue drawing now up to 4 cards. This now, of course, means that Drapion V in Pedro's hand will be able to attack with also 0 energy cost, unless Nico finds his, I believe, path to the peak that he plays.
It'll be interesting to see if Nico manages to get any sort of disruption for Pedro's hand, probably knowing at this point that he has quite a strong one considering the things in that lost zone. So it could go either way.
Yeah, there's a few cards that Nico would like to combo with right now. Again, here's it. He does find the switching out, so the escape route will put Pedro in a bit of a slightly different spot here. Of course, Nico has already used the boss as well, so it kind of puts Pedro in a situation where he may just potentially give up just one of those configs because it's no situation different to what it was before. But potentially, if he doesn't need to use a card like the Cramorant anymore, he may just sort of offer it up as a bit of a sacrifice. But just one of those decisions to make. Yep, there's just the easy switch into the other config for the time being, which means Mew will be able to take a prize here and put Nico ahead again. Similar to game one, but of course will always be at the threat of a Drapion V just coming down.
Yeah, that config might not be needed for much longer, so I don't think it's that worrisome for Pedro, knowing that there are more in the deck. He's already got a very decent amount of cards in the Lost Zone. The Mirage Gate's far off yet, but it wouldn't take much for a one more Comfey and Colress to fix that.
No, definitely. And Nico already has the Mew on the bench as well, so no scenario like game one where he didn't really have another Mew or Mew VMAX ready to go. Does get his 4th Genesect out for a full Fusion Strike system to 6 into his hand now. So we have seen, as you already mentioned, that kind of burst potential that Nico could just immediately go straight into and back into the game. Like I said, begin to find an interesting way to play over and work out how Pedro's going to be taking prizes as well, because right now is that a fusion energy also attached?
Yeah.
Manual attachment, of course, and there is just a choice of an attack here.
Could even utilize Max Miracle at this point, so 110 damage with the minuses from the double turbo energy still knocks out a Comfey, and then again they don't have to pivot, but they do have the option this time round because there is another Mew on bench.
Yeah, does just choose to use the Techno Blast from the Genesect V there, so that Mew VMAX will not be able to attack on his next turn without having, well, unless he's able to pivot out of that position as well. But you know, there is another Mew on the bench, sort of hopefully looking to go soon as well. And it does go over to Pedro's side. Does use concealed cards immediately already as well. So again, Pedro's hand looking super healthy right now with lots of different options. He's just going to have to double check what other cards he will be able to see from this as well. Looks like, was that a Sableye and a Mirage Gate? I'm right now just kind of guessing, unfortunately.
I think it may have been a Comfey. I'd wonder which psychic type it was. We definitely saw purple there.
Yeah, we saw purple.
Oh, you were right.
Yes. So again, I wasn't quite able to see the other card into that flower selecting, but of course, it does have a third Comfey ready as well.
It may well have been both, and we both get
there you go.
a glory point.
Both get a point. There's the Scoop Up Net, which is that fantastic card that allows you to utilize and pivot across different single prize Pokemon as well. And there's an easy choice, I think, with that Battle VIP pass. Immediately now going to 6 in the Lost Zone. Does re-bench that Comfey, of course, because it went back to hand, is able to utilize it again. Should he be able to maneuver back into it, or does have many options.
So many options are
see the switch cart, I see a Bird Keeper, so lots of different options, but of course we'll want to try and utilize maybe that Drapion in his hand as well. Looks like he will be using that Bird Keeper. Draw 3 cards, that hand's going up to over 10. Drawing many. Look, I'm always envious of having so many different cards in hand, so many different options. You see with so many different decks, sometimes you're just a little bit stuck. We saw with Nico only having 3 cards a moment ago. But here is another flower selecting now.
With a really difficult choice. You can see the look on Pedro's face. I believe that was a Mirage Gate and a Luminion.
Yeah, it's the Luminion could be useful, but we saw him lost zone it, and we do wave it bye-bye there, as Pedro does take his tally up to 7 now. So Mirage Gate is live. So will give himself lots of utilization in terms of the way how he can potentially position his attackers. Quick balls away, another battle VIP pass. He's removing all those less useful cards now from his deck and hand. Again, as I mentioned, if he's going to be manied or judged in some way, shape or form, he's going to be just getting himself in a position where he will try to only leave good cards left in his deck.
It's brilliant to see, again, that pace of play. Pedro has such calmness when it comes to being able to attack, because they've just got to take their time with everything. And obviously with one of their attackers being in the prize cards, he's got to take his time. But we get a similar attached to round 1 with the loading up that Greninja with some energy, ready to knock out maybe multiple things, but unfortunately there's no Meloetta target this round.
But there is that Genesect that he could eye up. So another potential easy 2 prizes there. Knowing Nico's very unlikely to find any other way to maneuver away from it at all. So Pedro being able to just kind of threaten that on his board will make Nico play a little bit differently sometimes, because there's so many options. Nico won't really know what's going to come down and hit him. And hit into his Mew deck at all. So we do see that Oranguru as well, kind of positioning a card to the top of Pedro's deck. Does have utility, more utility from Pedro's deck here as well. That Training Court, getting that water energy back, allowing that Moonlight Shuriken to be now an option if he chooses to do so. So it'll be interesting to see how Pedro plays this. I mean, of course, a lot of the times people don't really want to be playing their V Pokemon too early. They want to be timing that to the best scenario possible. As we saw, he took 4 prizes with his Sky Seal Stone in game 1. So if he's able to take the knockout on this Genesect, it will put him down to 4 prizes remaining, and then give himself that opportunity to just kind of sweep in 2 attacks.
It's fun to see the ways that clever players can avoid dangerous cards like Roxanne, where their hand is going to be disrupted when they've built it so elegantly. And being able to take prize cards in a way that prevents that happening by taking 2 and then 4 can really make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. And we've already seen the Roxanne kind of hit the board at some state. It might have been gone into the discard pile. But just by knowing that sort of information available, we do see, again, another similar play to game 1. Pedro's board is fully set up in the similar state, in the way that he won game 1, I say. There's a switch cart, and he looks like he's going into Drapion V now. This Mew is staring down at the Nemesis that has been released to kind of keep it in check. But how I've mentioned Mew before, and why we all consider it such a powerful deck, it's had to have a card like Drapion V to keep it not just steamrolling the way it has done in the early stages at points, but still finds itself in a position where it's still able to, still win tournaments, still do super well.
Yeah, Mew truly needed a nemesis in this format, and whoo, they bought it.
Yeah, exactly. With that amazing ability on Drapion V, being able to attack with reduced energy cost, depending on how many types of fusion or single strike Pokemon, I believe, to be able to just deal heavy damage. And where we do see the auto promotion of that Mew V to the active spot, does have that access to that Mew V Max as well, and the DT already attached. So we'll be doing, if using Technoblast, 190 damage. So it's 210 minus the 20 on that DTE that's attached. So we'll need a multiplier to be able to take the knockout here. And probably we'll just be looking for those opportunities. There's the power. There's double.
There they are.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, doesn't need 1. He'll just use 2. It's absolutely fine. But I guess, again, removing cards from his hand, looking for those disruption, I think, is the play here right now.
Yeah, it's important because Pedro's already got more set up, and it's quite petrifying to see that even though there's a threat of Drapion right in front of them, the Greninja's ready too on the bench, raring to go.
Yeah, I'm just looking at a few different things that are available to Nico right now. As I mentioned, there's not really anything that allows him to necessarily heal that Genesect. You know, some people do play cards like Switch Card. Oh no, yep, there's no Switch Card, unfortunately, to just kind of reduce that damage on that Genesect. So it'll always be threatened by that Radiant Greninja on Pedro's side of the board. So again, Pedro's eyeing up how exactly he's taken those prizes, those 4 and then the final 2. Nico will just be looking at any opportunity here to try and stop that from happening. Does choose to use Technoblast here, and Pedro, I believe the writing's on the wall, unless I'm mistaken.
We say goodbye to Drapion, and sadly Nico had no way of stopping it, although they do have some techs in their deck. They've got things like Path to the Peak, which can shut off that ability so that, well, Drapion just can't attack.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just this kind of awkward scenario now where Pedro will just likely be announcing Moonlight Shuriken, discarding 2 energies, dealing 90 damage to 2 Pokemon, targets down that Genesect V, and we will have our round 1 winner of Regionals Bochum there by Pedro, being able to just, you know, like I said, prize map all of his prizes that he will be knocking out to take all 6. And this is a great start for Pedro. Unlucky to Nico. We do get to see Mew in full flow, being able to draw all those cards, being able to sort of bounce between attackers and show the true power of it. But just when you're up against a deck which has the right techs and a player like Pedro who's going to be playing it to the highest level, really, it's just one of those where it's a bit unfortunate, but he'll just have to pick himself up. He knows what Mew can do. This is why he's brought it to the tournament like this. And there's many, many more rounds to go.
Absolutely. It's beautiful to see a seasoned player like Pedro and see them synergizing with that deck that they have fine-tuned to just their play style to make any situation in their benefit.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, you know, Pedro's been playing for a number of years now. He's obviously well seasoned to be on stream. He is a previous OCIC winner. He's top 4 worlds. You know, he is a player of the highest level, and of course is just coming back. Well, despite being a little bit jet lagged when I saw him the other day, has been able to rest up and take round 1. It's, like I said, it's a great start. There are 8 more rounds to go. Of course, you do need the 19 points minimum in day 1 to make it into day 2. But at tournaments like these now, when you're getting over 700, sometimes 800 players, more in some of the other tournaments that we've seen a lot of players try and push for even more points to put themselves in better contention for day 2 as well. So yeah, congratulations to Pedro for that round 1.
It was beautiful to see. I can't wait to see some more, and hopefully Pedro will go on to do very well in this tournament. We've seen that synergy with their deck, and I'm confident that that's going to continue. Let's hope that they don't get tired by the end of the day.
Oh, definitely. We're you know, as casters and fans of the game as well, we'll also be following a lot of our players throughout the tournament. We'll be following Pedro's journey throughout this tournament as well, because we know he's been on a bit of a tear throughout this season so far, as the road to Yokohama is coming to fruition for a lot of players as we begin to sort of qualify for the World Championships as well. But, you know, there's a lot of other notable players here. We've seen Owen Kammerman also, who topped 8 in OCIC,
Yeah.
I believe with Mew.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, and Raz, who also top 8, but also with Lugia.
Yes, can't forget the Gigalith of the tournament.
It's a deck which is dominated either both players actually playing the deck itself, the conversion rate, people going into the top 8s with Lugias as well. Just that pure power and consistency that a deck can bring is fantastic to see. But at the same time, you know, there's little tweaks people are making to be able to match up with that power as well. So lots to look forward to. Hopefully we'll be able to bring a lot of those different decks. And if we do see any little bit of spice, we'll try and bring that onto the stream as well to give the viewers at home and us a bit of more creativity in this game where possible.
Absolutely. There's a lot of different ways that each of these types of decks can go. There's so many different card choices, and I think the players have really brought it today by the looks of it.
And just with that, just as we've seen with Pedro winning round 1, we will be shooting straight over to the interview area where we'll have a chance to speak to our round 1 winner, and we'll be back shortly.
All right there, guys. We are now joined with the one and only, I should say, Pedro, coming all the way from Australia, where I think you've done quite well. Was it a top 8 finish, I believe?
Yep. Top 8. Really happy for the OCIC because I already won in Melbourne 2016-2017 season, and now getting top 8 in the same place is definitely amazing, right? Really good feeling. And yes, back-to-back tournament. Just come home like Tuesday, and Thursday I'm traveled to Bochum to play more Pokemon. But yeah, it's amazing.
Wow, love that. And I can see you're playing a very similar deck. Is it the exact same deck as you were playing in OCIC?
No leaks, guys, but I'm playing one card different.
Ooh.
That it was shown already in the stream. I'm playing the Birdkeeper over the 4 Escape Room. But yeah, similar deck, just one change to hopefully have more consistency with the Birdkeeper for sure.
Okay, love that, love that. Now talk to us about that round 1. So your opponent flips over Mew, and then actually revealed to be playing the Fusion Energy build, not something you see every day. How does that change the matchup for you as a Lost Box player?
Well, definitely it's more scary because sometimes if you go first and you don't start comfy, the opponent can potentially dunk you, right, with the Meloetta version because they go Fusion with a less Sparkle. So definitely a bit scary, but as long as you start comfy or VIP pass or capture energy, we play too many outs for that. It should be fine because then when they attack with Cramoran, with the Meloetta, you can respond with the Cramoran knockout. And then definitely Drapion helps a lot in the matchup. And the Sky Seal Stone, as we could see, it took 4 prizes both games. So definitely the Drapion already worth 1 round for sure.
Yeah, no, and that Sky Seal Stone in combination with Drapion is absolutely crazy. But one thing I'm interested in with the Sky Seal Stone is that how much utility do you get with it in other matchups?
So it's especially for that matchup from the Mew, thanks to Drapion, and it's also pretty nice against Lugia, what is super popular, probably the best deck in the format, because with Raikou V, if they don't play Dance Bars, you can surprise them with the Sky Seal Stone and take 3 prizes thanks to Raikou V. Also, it's possible to take a prize with Luminium V, but it's definitely really complicated to manage that, so it's mainly for Raikou V against things like Lugia, Flying Pikachu, because it's weak to Lightning. If you can escape Rob and Boss, for example, because otherwise you cannot attack into them because they prevent the damage from basics. Also against other stuff like that, you take extra prize, what is pretty nice to finish your game.
Okay, really interesting. I've actually got some more questions about your list as well, so I'm very curious. So we actually saw in that game, I'm not sure if we saw it attack, we saw the Zamazenta from Crown Zenith, one of the only cards realistically that we've been seeing from Crown Zenith. And I saw in OCIC you actually opted to play a copy of Snorlax as well, I believe. What made you play the split? Because on paper, it looked like they're very similar cards. So what made you opt for the split?
Yeah, so the main reason is Zamazenta hits 220 if you're getting knocked out, but if not, 100 base is not too great in some matchups. And if I was considering to run 2 Zamazenta because in general feels better, but then you need to run more Metal Energies to pull up Zamazenta back-to-back plays, right? Thanks to Snorlax, you have a solid 180 damage that you can one-shot Archeops, for example, against Lugia, and you can put different type of energies into Snorlax, like I play Water, Metal, Psychic, and Lightning, so you can power Snorlax with one of that energies, right? And then in the bench, Zamazenta with Metal Energies to hopefully KO back the Stoutland Vs, mainly that reason. And also KO some Vs. 220 is an amazing number. So yeah, I play a split because I can power up Snorlax with different energies than Metal, and then Zamazenta with Metals here.
Okay, interesting. There you go, getting some info for you there, guys, at the stream. So talk to us about why you've settled on this version of Lost Box. I know Lost Box is a very open-ended deck. You know, we had Cryoga, Sablezard back in the day. Now we're seeing like a sort of hybrid Sky Steel Stone sort of weakness attacking style. And obviously we saw Azul popularise now a Dragonite version. Yep. So what made you sort of settle on this version, and sort of what are your matchups that you're looking to hit, and what are the matchups you're looking to avoid?
So thanks to this version, I know I lose or I have a really bad matchup against Tier 2, Tier 3 decks. I have no answer against Ace-Q Control or against Flying Pikachu with no Pokemon in the bench because I don't play Dragonite, right? Because thanks to Dragonite, you can through the Ace-Q with the first attack.
Yes.
So I accept some losses, but I prepare the deck to hopefully have a good chance and have a good matchup, or at least 50-50 against the top 3. What is Lawson, because I play Roxanne, what is a really good comeback card in case I start losing on prices. I play Drapion for the VMAX matchup. And against Lugia, as we talk about, I play Snorlax to KO Archeops and Luminions. I play Samacenta to KO Stoutland, and the Raikou V to hopefully take an extra prize against Lugia V-Star. So my deck is ready and prepared to have a good matchup, at least 50-50 against the top 3. But I know I will have a hard time against Tier 2 and Tier 3 decks. I guess Azul Leaves have a better matchup against that Tier 2 or Tier 3 decks thanks to Dragonite or second Sableye. But I decide to touch only for the top 3. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Which I think for yourself, you know, a player used to being at the lofty heights and doing really well. Hopefully we shouldn't be running into any crazy Tier 2 or Tier 3. Let's all cross our fingers there for Pedro. So one last question for you, Pedro. Sure. So obviously, you know, you're very good at this game, one of the best players in Europe. I think everyone can agree on that. When you come to an event like this, what are your goals?
So my goals normally is try to make day 2. I guess that's the main goal I had since I started playing competitively. And if I cannot make day 2, I will still try to focus to hopefully get championship points, because my goal is to go to Yokohama, to Japan, to the World Championship, hopefully in day 2. So I need to get in the first 22 place from Europe. So my goal is trying to make day 2, and if not, try to make some championship points. And sometimes you have a bad day, or you have bad matchups, or you don't play really well and you don't make points, but that's part of the game. I want to tell everyone that the most important part is to have the experience to play, to have fun with friends. If you don't get the result you expect, just train, just hopefully the next one is going to be better. Yeah, it's a game with RNG involved, so even if you are pretty good, sometimes you have bad days. So just don't worry about it. Continue training, because I guess it's a long-term game. That's my thoughts, at least.
I think that is fantastic advice there for anyone listening. You know, if you have a bad round or a bad day, just forget about it. You're in a big hall, you know, 500 similar-minded Pokemon players who all want to have fun. And let's not forget, it's a game. We are here to have fun. You know, winning's good, obviously getting the prizes and the money, but let's not forget to have fun. Fantastic advice there from Pedro, one of our best players there in Europe. But now I think we're going to kick it back to the casters, where they're going to dive into OC. Oh no, we're cutting to a break, unfortunately. Right. And then we'll be talking about OCIC and all the statistics where Pedro did really well.